not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. They're all expecting me, and that's one thing I know. Well, I fixed it up with Jesus a long, long time ago, and I know He'll see me through, 'cause He makes me strong and sure, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven is not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh no, I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus, like a fragrance after the rain. Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms shall all pass away, but there's something about that name. Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. Kings and kingdoms shall all pass away, but there's something about that name. Kings and kingdoms shall all pass away, but there's something about that name.
Yes, the band can take their seats now, thank you. As beautiful as that song is, I always forget that it's short. So someday maybe we'll write another verse to it, make it a little bit longer. I want to say greetings to everybody that's in here and everybody that's out there. This is the Children of the Free Ministry Church. My name is Charles Garcia. I'm the pastor. You can watch reruns and archives on Facebook and on YouTube. And soon we hope you'll be able to get some of the many archive messages we have on Ustream, at least on audio. But I want to ask you to make every effort that you can to be here live faithfully. God is faithful, be thou faithful. That's one way that you can do it. Now, you've heard it said, and you've heard me say it, that the devil's alive and well. Right? Well, we're under his attacks. We're under attacks from Satan because we teach God's truth here. And we've been under concentrated attacks this week. I remember when we were with Dr. Scott, it seems like the cycle that the devil would go through on his attacks would be that he first would attack the staff, and there'd be all kinds of problems with the staff until that got straightened out and remedied, and then the congregation would be attacked. And we'd go through all the problems with the congregation, trying to get things straightened out. And then lastly, the equipment would be attacked. And then we'd get a victory. This week's attack has been on the equipment. So victory's coming. And the attacks on the equipment, though, that are going on now did carry considerable risk to our chief engineer, Brandon. He's the one that is responsible for bringing this production to you. And much, much more than that. He could have been badly hurt or worse. And I'm going to give you just a small example of what we experienced in a full day's worth earlier this week. I think you need to hear these illustrations. I, by and large, don't like to give mileage to the devil, but you need to know some of the things that we go through in order to bring this teaching of God's Word to you. And you can probably identify with some of the things that you go through trying to get to God's teaching. One of our vehicles developed some slippage in the belts on the tire. That happens sometimes with these radial tires that they have, and when that happens, the tire gets bent, it wobbles, it's no good. Can't use it. That was taken off the vehicle, and the spare that came with the vehicle is one of those donut spares. I call them jabroni spares. And that was put on the vehicle. Now, mind you, I'm just going to highlight like 4 quick things here. There's a lot of stuff that happened in between that we're not going to talk about now. But while the vehicle was being driven to replace the bad tire, the spare blew out on the highway. So first we get a bent tire, no good. Second, we get a blown out spare. God enters into all things to work his good, we believe. Proper translation of Romans. And a ride was provided that brought Brandon into the church garage and back here. And there was another spare there that was picked up, another one of those jabroni spares, taken back to the vehicle. Thanks be to God, it fit. It was put on. The vehicle was driven into town, taken to the garage where the tires were going to be repaired. And I believe I may be a little out of sequence here, but when the car was being jacked up to take off the spare and replace the tire, one of the other tires blew up. Now, what are the chances of that? You have to sit here and say, I don't know well, I do know how this happened. But you wonder, there's a lot of times a perfectly logical explanation. Maybe the bent tire caused the other tire to weaken, and then the blown tire caused the other tire to eventually blow. But here we go, bent tire, blown spare, blown unexpectedly other tire. Both tires had to be replaced. A lot of rigmarole in between I'm not going to go into. When the vehicle was being driven back to the parsonage, an 80-year-old man came the wrong way on a one-way street, went over a center divider, and broadsided our vehicle on the driver's side. And on it went. And that's only 4. Bent tire, blown spare, blown other tire, broadsided, out of probably 12 or 15 things that happened on that day. Well, victory's coming. And I just brought to mind something we were talking about Dr. Scott earlier on. You want to hear a Dr. Scott story? Can I tell Dr. Scott's story? It has really nothing to do with what the subject is tonight, but I would like to have your input on it if you would do me that. Those of you who may be new that have read the bio on the website know this, and those of you who don't, I was his medical officer for many, many years. And about 7 or 8 years, I would say, probably before he was taken home, he had what appeared to be a heart attack. And he was taken to the hospital, to the emergency room, and subsequently to the operating room where they put stents in his heart. I believe, if I remember correctly, this happened like on a Friday evening. And he was a father par excellence, was determined to have church Sunday morning at 11, the way he always did. Now, mind you, this is probably, I'd say the better part of 15 years ago. So they didn't have access to, what's it called? Wireless internet, or it was not easily available. Certainly wasn't available in the hospital then. So when he was on remote locations or difficult locations like this, unless he could have, he had a couple of giant vans that were mobile studios. If they couldn't be there, then we did what was called a phone patch. He would call the studio by phone, get patched into the studio, and then his voice would be shot up to the satellite, and then it would come down out of the satellite to the TV vendors and to shortwave. So we're in the hospital. He's recovering from this, was determined to be there. The date, in case you want to know that, was the 8th of February, 1998, where he preached from the hospital, from his bed, and he preached on Isaiah 50, the names of Jehovah. Anyway, thank you for the reminder. We were in the hospital room. At this time, it was Sunday, approaching time to go live throughout the entire world. And the doctors and nurses, technicians, housekeeping, maintenance, everybody was gone. It was just Dr. Scott, Doc, his wife, 2 staff members, and myself in the room. And he had already gotten clearance to have the phone patch and be undisturbed, I think, for 20 minutes so he could talk to his congregation all over the world. And the only way we could receive the signal that was going out was by shortwave. So one of the staff members was over by the window fiddling with the shortwave radio, trying to position it so he could get a good signal. Finally found good signal. And we've all been there before and done that. And it was about time for us to go, mind you, live to the whole world. And Doc, from his hospital bed, told the one staff member, hold it right there and don't move, the shortwave radio. And when Dr. Scott said something like that, he said, yes, sir. The other staff member was told, go to the door, block it, and don't let anybody in. Now, my name is Charles. My family nickname is Buddy. That's what Dr. Scott used to call me. So he says, you stand there and don't move. You stand by the door and don't let anybody in. Then he said, Buddy, hold my feet. You might say, come again? Because I kind of mentally did, but that's what he said. Hold my feet. So I went over to the foot of the bed, reached under the covers, and held on to his feet. And he proceeded to preach to the whole world by phone patch, with me holding his feet for at least 45 minutes. Got his message out. As usual, a great message. I don't know why that was done. I never got a chance to ask him why he did that. I speculate, and I'm thinking maybe he needed some kind of a spiritual grounding or something while he was doing that. So I just thought you might, like those of you who knew of Dr. Scott or who studied under him, might like to hear every once in a while a story that's not invading anybody's privacy that you might enjoy hearing. So I thought I'd share that with you. But I would like to find out, I'd like to have you send messages to me, and there's several ways to do that, what your opinion is as to why he did that. Now, you may agree with what I'm saying. I think probably most people would, but you might have some novel ideas. You might disagree and say something else. But on that subject, don't message me thinking you're going to get something nasty to me or something derogatory or something mean. It never even gets to me. Okay? So I won't even know that you did it. So I would call legitimate messages. Get them to me. So the fight goes on. Back to tonight and what's going on currently. So we're going to teach from Psalms tonight a message for the fight that we're in. And I want you to go with me into the book of Psalms to Psalm 27. I haven't taught on this one much, maybe once, and not for a long time. But there's some important things that we need to go over in here that apply to our life of faith and this fight and this warfare of faith that we find ourselves in. And if you're not in a fight, you better double check and make sure you're on the right track. This psalm was written by David, a man after God's own heart. And it starts right off the bat. Oh, by the way, this is going to tell you some things that God's going to do in your warfare and in your fight to provide, to protect, to guide, and direct. You know, unintentionally, that almost rhymes, doesn't it? Provide, protect, guide, and direct. It starts out by saying, the Lord. And the name of God that's being translated here, and one of the things we teach, because we need to know his attributes and his aspects and his names and what they mean, is Yahweh Shabbat. And in general, that means the Lord of hosts. That's the big God, the God that's in charge of everything. And David starts out by saying, the Lord, that one, Yahweh Shabbat, is my light. And that's translating another name of Jehovah, Jehovah Ori. The God is my light in the darkness, and so on. The Lord is my light and my salvation. And the word that's being translated salvation really is derived from a root word coming from the Hebrew word Ashwa. Ashwa is helper, or to help. In fact, one of God's names, Jehovah Ashwa, the word is Jehovah Ashwa, the Lord our helper, the Lord our help. But it's not translating that, it's translating helper, Ashwa. But as a matter of fact, as you contract that word, those words Jehovah Ashwa, Jehoshua, it becomes Joshua. And that's a cognate of Jehovah Ashwa, our helper. And Joshua is a Hebrew cognate of the Greek name Jesus. helper. So, the Lord is my light and my salvation, helper, Ashua. Whom shall I fear? I should say. Now keep in mind what we're talking about, these faith battles that we're in, this warfare, this fight that we're in. Whom shall I fear? He's my light and my salvation. The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Again, I should say. When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. It brings to mind promises we get from other parts of Scripture. No weapon formed against thee shall prosper. When the enemies came upon me, they stumbled and fell. Though an host should encamp against me, that's more than two or three. Host is a whole bunch. Even though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. Confidence in Jehovah Ashua, or Jehovah Ori. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to hold the beauty of the Lord and inquire in his temple. That phrase, inquire in his temple, really best means seek to be taught in his temple. For in the time of trouble, we found ourselves in that early this week and throughout the week, and off and on all the time. In the time of trouble, he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me upon a rock. And think about this. Put yourself in this place here. That's pretty safe. Set you up on this big old rock. And while he's on this big old rock, it says, and now shall mine head be lifted up above mine enemies round about me. Therefore will I offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing, yea, I will sing praises to the Lord. But notice this response to being saved by God and lit up by God's light. Going to give. And that's an opportunity that you have often when you're under these attacks. Certainly Satan does not want you supporting a ministry like this that teaches the truth of God's word, rightly divided. So if you're supporting it, hey, send an extra offering. $5, $10, $100. You know what you can do. Slap the devil in the face. It's saying here, I'll offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. I will sing, and I will sing praises to the Lord. And that's translating a word, ruah, the Hebrew word ruah, which is part and parcel of the root word ruach, which is God's breath that he breathed into Adam, God's breath that he just takes away from you when he takes you home. But we're talking about ruah, which is a blast or a shout of joy. That's the translation of that. I will sing praises unto the Lord, ruah, a blast of joy. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy also upon me and answer me. Now, we're not just going to go over that. I'm going to pause here, and we're going to go into a quick side message here I think is important. He said, have mercy upon me. We're going to teach you a little mini lesson within the lesson tonight, illustrating how merciful God is, and that he is a merciful God. Remember when we taught in Genesis 5 recently, when we were teaching on Enoch and Hebrews 11? I hope somebody remembers. Anyway, Hebrews 5 is where it says, and the generations of Adam are, and it says, Adam had Seth, and he lived so many hundred years, and then he died, and he goes on through what we call the patriarchs. All of them living hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. With the exception of Enoch, who never died. He was taken home at 365 years, but that's not the subject tonight. But he's in that list. Because when you come to Enoch, who is the seventh from Adam, and that is God's number of completion, he has a son. And all these descendants have been named by God or through God's inspiration. And Enoch's son was named Methuselah. I think we've all heard that name before. We're all familiar with it. But God entering in to name this child, the name Methuselah means when he dies, the end comes. Now, can you imagine being a dad if you're Enoch? I think you'd go through some changes if this kid got the flu or got a cold or something like that. Would be easy to say, right? God had already decided then what he was going to do when Methuselah dies. It's going to come to an end by the flood, by the way, in case you're missing the story here. But here's the point of this little side message. God knew what he was going to do, and he knew why he was going to do it. Why would he let this kid live any more than 6 months? Just take him and do what he's going to do. Methuselah lived longer than anybody else ever lived. 969 years. Now, when we taught on the resurrection, as Dr. Scott taught us, we taught about internal evidences showing that these reporters were telling the truth. There's an internal evidence showing God's mercy, and it's not even there. The word does not even appear in Genesis. And I'm grabbing it out of Psalms here to tell you when he says he's looking for God's mercy. How more merciful can you get than that? God knew what he was going to do, and yet he waited almost 1,000 years, 969 years, to bring it all to an end and cause the flood. That's how merciful God is. Now back to the main lesson, back to Psalm 27. Repeating it again, he says, "Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice. Have mercy also upon me and answer me." And this next verse, this 8th verse, kind of puts a smile on my face. I think it will on you too, because it's kind of funny. It says, "When thou saidst, Seek ye my face, my heart said unto thee, Thy face, Lord, will I seek." You know, it's like saying, seek my face. I'm seeking it, Lord. "When thou saidst, Seek my face, my heart said unto thee, Thy face, Lord, will I seek. Hide not thy face far from me. Put not thy servant away in anger. Thou hast been my help." Again, that word, Oshua. Write that down. Oshua. Help. Helper. God's help. "Leave me not, neither forsake me." He said he wouldn't. "I will never leave thee or forsake thee." How many times did he say that, guys? Many, many times. So he's saying, "Neither forsake me," and I'm saying, he said he wouldn't. Many times. "God of my salvation." And then he's going to say something here in the 10th verse that's sort of like an extreme, carry this to the extreme. "When my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take me up." What he's saying here really should be said, when my father and my mother forsake me, even then the Lord will take me up. 11th verse, "Teach me thy way." One of the things that we're commissioned to teach here, as much as we're able to do it, is God's ways. It's important to him. The people only came to see my acts, he said. Only Moses came to know my ways. He's saying, David's saying here, "Teach me thy ways, O Lord, and lead me in a plain path because of mine enemies." There's the guidance, direction that God's giving in these battles here. To write that in, guidance, direction. Deliver me not over to the will of mine enemies, for false witnesses are risen up against me, and such as breathe out cruelty. We're talking about things that people say and do. But there's another promise that goes along with the one I said earlier, no weapon formed against thee shall prosper. It also says, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn. That applies to this here. Deliver me not over to the will of mine enemies, for false witnesses are risen up against me, and such as breathe out cruelty. And then it says, I had fainted unless I had believed. Circle that word believe. They're translating a word from the Hebrew word batak, which means what? To lean on a staff. That's one of the trust words. Put your full weight on it, trusting that it's going to hold you up. Unless I had believed, batak, faith, leaned on that staff to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. 14th verse. Wait on the Lord. And we're not talking about this. We're not talking about wait like that. It's really translating a phrase that means entrenchment. Entrench on the Lord. Be of good courage. And although we know God loves courage above all, and 90% of faith is courage, that's not what's being translated here. The word that's being translated here means strength. And it comes from the Hebrew word Uzi, believe it or not, just like the Israeli machine gun. Uzi. It's spelt slightly differently, but that means strength. Wait, entrench on the Lord. Be of good strength, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, or entrench, I say, on the Lord. I'm going to do that. Are you going to do that too? That's my message tonight. And it's offering time. The address should be up on the screen. This is not the time to drop the ball on anything. I believe we are approaching the end times. Now is the time to do everything you're supposed to be doing. That is acting in faith, trusting God, supporting the truth of His Word, giving His way, entrenching yourself, clinging lovingly to Him. Remember that message from Psalm 91? And the song for the offertory tonight is, okay, that's what we are, sinners saved by grace.
If you could see what I once was, if you could go with me back to where I started from, I know you would see the miracle of love that put me in its sweet embrace. Make me what I am today, a sinner saved by grace. I'm just a sinner saved by grace. When I stood condemned to death, He took my place. the victories God has won. Where would I be had God not led me gently to this place? I'm here to say I'm nothing but a sinner saved by grace.
I'm just a sinner saved by grace. When I stood condemned to death, He took my place. Now I grow and breathe in freedom with every breath of life I take, loved and forgiven. Back with the living, I'm just a sinner saved by grace.
Good. I want to take a moment before we close tonight. Really, I meant to do it early on, but really just to give a shout out there to you guys in North Carolina and in South Carolina and in Virginia and in Nevada and in Southern California, Los Angeles. And I want to say one more thing before we close. Tonight is message number 300. That explains the intensity of the attacks. The message I preach tonight may or may not be anything special in itself, but 300 means something to God and it means something to us. So it means something to Satan also, thus the attacks. But I want to just claim right now with you all that we made it through 2013. And let's close with our theme song, Keep On Walking in Faith.
Well, I searched and I searched for a road that led to glory. I wondered if I'd ever find my way. I was so dismayed, for the road it seemed so lonely. But then I heard a voice within me say, you've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, can only get in the faith way, walking in the light of the Lord. Well, I failed and I failed, and the Lord, He gave me mercy. I failed and He brightened up my way. I sat down to rest, for my feet had grown so weary. But then I heard a voice within me say, you've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, can only get it in the faith way, walking in the light of the Lord. You've got to keep on walking, keep right on walking, walking in the light of the Lord. You'll get to heaven someday, can only get in the faith way, walking in the light of the Lord, walking in the light of the Lord, walking in the light.